Hi there. I hope you had a great weekend. I spent a lot of my weekend getting ready to refresh my office. I want to spruce it up a little bit and make it kind of a fun place to podcast. So I've been working on that. And as a result, I started looking into ChatGPT to see if maybe it could help me redecorate my office without having to have a bunch of trial and error. And instead, I ended up finding a site called reimaginehome.ai. So I'm going to be trying that after I get done podcasting. I'm not being sponsored by this site in any way, shape, or form. It's actually something I just came upon, and I want to see if it'll help me because I have an idea in my head of what I want to do, but I don't necessarily want to go out and buy a bunch of different colors of paint or wallpaper or decor if I'm not going to like it. So if I could have it visualized with an AI app, that would be amazing. So that's what I'm going to try, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. But today we're talking about the Real Housewives of Atlanta, episode 14. And we're still in Grenada. It's day 2, and this is the renew portion of their 3-part adventure, I guess we could call it. So the girls wake up and it's a gorgeous day. And in the replay, they show that on the way home the night before, Brittany was so drunk that apparently she was throwing up all over the place. And because she wanted to protect her outfit, she took her corset off. So she's walking around drunk, smelling like vomit, and she's topless with her corset in her hand. The girls are shocked. They can't believe the way she's behaving. But in Brittany's defense, she did say that she's not a good drunk. Well, it's Angela's anniversary, remember? And she still can't get a hold of Charles. She said, I talked to him yesterday, but I haven't been able to get a hold of him. And honestly, he's just sending her to voicemail. I think he just doesn't want to have anything to do with this show. And I think he's just messing with her emotions. I know a lot of people are really coming down on Charles, but I'm still on the side of I think he's a cool cat. I really think Kelly just loves her boobs, don't you? Because she walks out wearing that outfit, and it's an adorable outfit, but the first thing Phaedra tells her is, hey, you could use some nipple covers. I have some. Your nipples are popping out. And thankfully, Britt takes her up on them. Well, the girls are in the kitchen, and then Cynthia joins, and then eventually Shamea and Kelly. And Shamea tells us that now, not only has her luggage not yet arrived, but now they can no longer track it. So I guess she's going to be borrowing clothes. I'm sure that even her Mary Poppins-like carry-on bag is eventually going to run out of outfits, and she's going to have to find some other way to get through this vacation. Well, Drew shows up, and then Angela shows up, and everybody's getting ready for their date. Half of the girls are going to go to a waterfall, and then with Shamea, and then Kelly's taking the rest of the girls to a cooking class. Well, as they're getting ready to go, Shamea's telling the other girls that she doesn't understand why Britt is always thinking she's trying to read her or be shady. Shamea then goes on and kind of starts being shady by telling the girls about Britt's donation. She says that she called her and she kind of let her know on the sly that there should be a little bit of a monetary donation. And then she, like by design, throws out the amount of $250. And then everybody jumps on it, especially Phaedra, who says that it should be $1,000 minimum. And then everybody's upset because they're feeling like if she could show up with a Birkin and a Rolls Royce, she should be able to donate more money. I don't know how I feel about this, you guys. I think that people give what they can give. And I think that shaming people is kind of tacky. It's granted, there's a level based on where you are in life, but at the same time, charity is charity. It's not required. I don't know. The girls talked about their brand of trash back and forth. Like in each of the vehicles, they were talking about each other. Mainly, the girls were talking about Drew, and then the other girls were talking about Britt. And then Phaedra gets to talking about the fact that she knows Charles, that he's a good dude. And then the producers interject and ask if he acts married. And Phaedra says she doesn't know him to be out on the scene, but then again, she never knew he was married either. Well, we find out that they're going to be meeting with the Prime Minister later that evening. I'm assuming in exchange for, in gratitude for all of the donations and also the fact that it's on TV and maybe they could get a little bit more publicity and assistance for, what they had been going through. It's all a great idea if you ask me. And then when they get there, Phaedra sees monkeys and she gets a little triggered and tells us that monkeys are racist. Are monkeys racist? I personally have never been offended by any racial comments made by any sort of monkey, but that's just me. I'm not very well traveled, so maybe in Grenada the monkeys are racist. So funny story, not really funny story, but right in the middle of the Black Lives Matter movement, I was working with a couple of truck drivers that I would dispatch in my day job on loads. And they were very much of a political environment that was, I guess you could say, against the current presidency. And without getting too political, every time I would send this guy a text telling him this, that, or the next, here's your paperwork for the next load or what have you, he would send some meme of a monkey or a gorilla. And it always had really cute texts, but he knows that I'm half black. And after a while, it really started to piss me off. So much so that I ended up blocking him. And suffice to say, I don't work with this guy anymore, but I think that's what Phaedra was referring to. I think that people in the Black community somehow associate and attribute monkeys with being referred to as such. And maybe that's why they find it offensive. Listen, for whatever reason, Ms. Phaedra was triggered and she does not want to have anything to do with those Grenada racist monkeys. Well, we meet Krishna Kaliste, who is the host for the cooking party with, the girls that are going to the cooking party. And Chef Robert, who is going to walk them through, tells the girls he's going to show them how to make a famous and very popular dish in Grenada called oil down. And I don't know why, but that reminds me of, baby, come down, come down. Okay, that's just me. It's, again, a little insight to how my brain works. Sometimes it's a little frightening. Well, Kelly sees the guys and she just starts flirting big time. And then the guys announce that they're single. Well, who the hell wouldn't announce that they're single? Everybody has their asses hanging out. All of these girls are wearing either illusion clothing that is see-through or just straight up bikini. I'm not shaming anybody. Is this the way we just walk around in Grenada, though? I don't know. That sounds really judgy. Should I take it out? I'm probably not going to take it out. Well, let's move on. So let's talk about oil down. Oil down consists of breadfruit, chicken and pork, vegetables such as peppers, carrots, onions, green beans, and then dumplings. And it's kind of layered in a pot with some sort of a broth and then greens, which to me look like, I don't know, maybe some sort of an arugula, but I'm sure it's some sort of a local green. Then we're back at the waterfalls and the girls have this mad thirst trap swimsuit photo sesh. And we hear that Shamea is a little reluctant because she's in a borrowed bikini and she doesn't feel her body is bikini ready. But listen, by the end of the photo sesh, there'd be butts bouncing all over the place and everybody's dancing and having a good time. Those girls were feeling themselves and there's nothing wrong with that. It was just good, innocent fun. Rock it, ladies. Well, back at the cooking class, why did everybody shame Britt because she's not eating beef or pork? the lady hasn't had it for 30 years. Are you guys trying to get her sick? I mean, they keep kind of pressing on, and she says even if it's just the drippings, she can't do it. And so she says, you know, it looks good and it smells good. She's trying not to be rude. Well, the girls just say this shit's bomb, and you know, they love it and they're eating it all up. And I just didn't understand at all why that even had to be a part of it, and that's why I'm mentioning it here. Then Phaedra tells the girls she thought it was weird that Britt brought up Apollo, but nonetheless she is getting to know her and enjoying it. And I don't know, that seemed like it had a little bit of connotation to it, but we'll see. Portia's annoyed that Britt is saying she doesn't feel supported given they don't know her yet. I agree. Porsha says, like, dude, you're going in too deep. We're just getting to know you, and, you know, it's not that serious yet. Well, at the cooking class, they bring up Black again. And interestingly enough, the girls at the waterfall happen to be talking about the same thing. They asked Drew, and she says, although she and Black have been flirtatious, there's nothing going on. And if there were, she would be shouting it from the mountaintops because that's what she really wants. I don't know how much I believe about that. Like, they're constantly talking about how Drew's hooking up with this guy and the next, but yet it seems like she's like bent on making sure that nobody thinks she's dating anybody because she's still going through the divorce. And so maybe that is one of the, you know, bones of contention between them. But regardless, isn't Georgia a no-fault state when it comes to divorce? I don't know. Somebody look that up and let me know. I'm not going to do it. Did you guys notice how on the ride back, Porsha and Shamea were best friends again? They're finishing each other's sentences and singing songs and laughing and kikiing. I don't know that that lasts because I thought they were kind of on the outs again. I remember Shamea going on Watch What Happens Live early on in the season and saying that things weren't great between she and Porsha. So I'm a little bit confused, but, you know, maybe we need to continue watching to figure it out. So they head out to dinner and everybody looks stunning. I mean, these looks were gorgeous. Even Shamea, who had to borrow the yellow dress from Porsha, that was hitting in all points. Like, it was just really a good look for her. Anyway, before Angela heads down to dinner, she tries to call Charles again. And this guy's about as animated as a stalk of broccoli. He just does not want to talk to her. I think he's salty because she left, and he's going to treat her that way because he doesn't want her to be on this vacation. And she asks him to throw her a bone, and he says something like, you know, don't get into any trouble or whatever. It was not a great scene. But then down in the kitchen, Shamea's offering shots to all the girls, but she goes out of her way to make sure. She says she doesn't want anybody to feel pressured. And Britt, I don't know if you caught this, she kind of mumbles, I felt pressured. Then in the cutaway, Britt says that they're not hood rats, they're classy women, and Shamea is always screaming shot o'clock, and that's just not for her. Well, don't be judgy, Britt. If it's not for you, that's fine, but everybody's on vacation, and if they want to yell shot o'clock at 9 o'clock, it shouldn't be your business. So the girls are getting into the van. Did you notice when Cynthia stepped on Porsha? Ouch. Like, it hurts just to think about. Have you ever been stepped on by a spiked heel? I have. It was in that soft spot right in between your big toe and your next toe. And honest to God, it felt like somebody had just poked a hole through my foot. I don't remember anything happening. It was a long time ago. I was on stage. And, you know, you can't really do much when that's happening. But I remember the pain, and yikes, I don't wish that on anybody. Anyway, apparently they did fine because she just bounced back right away. Then we're at the dinner, and the dinner looks really pretty. The table's set lovely. You know, I think that Atlanta knows how to take a vacation. Well, the girls in particular start to talk to Shamea about being charitable and how they're fortunate enough to be in a position to give. And then Shamea starts kind of throwing shade at Brit, talking about, well, you can't show up with a Birkin and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and not be charitable. And Brittany is listening and nodding along, like in agreement. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like she has a light bulb moment. And she says it sounds like a little like shade. Shamea says, if I was being shady, Britt would know it. And then Kelly steps in and kind of tries to soften it by somehow implying that Britt does not have the knowledge of what is acceptable. Okay, we're getting back to shaming her for being charitable. I don't know what it's like back in Atlanta, and I know that, if you're going to be in philanthropy, it is definitely a calling, and it's definitely something that feeds upon it. You give $50 to one charitable donation, and next thing you know, somebody else is calling you. And so I would imagine that if you have a bag that you allocate to charity for the year, then that bag has a certain amount of money, and depending on where you give your money is how you allocate it. I don't feel that it's anybody's business to direct that allocation for you. So I'm Team Brit. It almost physically hurts me to say that, but I'm Team Brit when it comes to this. I don't think they should be shaming her. Now, don't forget, she did only show up with like a couple of, packs of toilet paper and paper towels. But again, I'm attributing that to the producers setting her up. So I'm going to give her a pass on this one. Porsha tells Britt that there has been no effort on her part to make friends. And then Britt calls Porsha out and says it is her who is this her on a text. So there was this text going around in the group text, and apparently Porsha tells us that Britt said something, but her name wasn't saved as a contact. And so she said, who is this? And Britt maintains that Porsha knew that it was her. Well, whatever. It starts to get heated as per usual. Things start to get riled up and the overtalk starts. And by the grace of God, the cavalcade with the Prime Minister arrives. So the girls are forced to get their shit together. Enter Honorable Dickon Mitchell, the Prime Minister of Grenada. The girls are super smitten. I mean, gosh, they find him very easy on the eyes. All of a sudden, the temperature comes down and they want him to sit and hang out and have a good time. Lord have mercy. Why are the producers asking who would make the best first lady? Well, Drew says it should be her, of course. But then Phaedra says that Druzilla in her Timu outfit just ain't gonna cut it. And that Porsha would be the lucky one and should be the lucky one. But then Angela thinks it should be Kelly. Nobody bothered to ask the guy if he's married. He eventually leaves after the toast, but before that, the girls noticed he wasn't wearing a ring, and then I guess they just assumed he wasn't married. They asked him if he had kids, and he did say he had 2 children. The natural follow-up question is, are you married? For some reason, they didn't ask that, and if they did, then it was cut on the edit. But there's a lot of talk about not wearing rings. This is very reminiscent of Jason and Janet on the Valley. Out of the clear blue sky, Angela pipes up and says, Charles doesn't wear a wedding ring. The girls are kind of taken aback, and Angela goes on to tell us that she brought it up in therapy, how much it bothers her that he doesn't wear a ring. And then I guess she says she'll bring it up again next week. But the tension is broken because they surprise Angela with a happy anniversary cake. I thought that was a cute move. I'm pretty sure that was production driven as well. But in any case, Angela's touched both in the moment and during the confessionals. She tells us she really appreciated it, and she gets a little emo. I thought it was cute. So they head out to dinner, and Britt basically brings up the fact that they never resolved anything, and that the original question was, why don't I invite people over? Porsha tries to cut her off and says, it's not a big deal. The only reason I brought it up was because I was trying to figure out how we could support you, but let's just let it go. Well, Britt says it again. Nobody has invited her over either. And then Phaedra notices that Britt's just self-sabotaging. She's alienating friends for no apparent reason. So she gives her the "I'm a seasoned housewife" conversation, and she tells her that she needs to show herself friendly. In the other car, Shamea's husband calls to tell us that Shiloh's sick. And the entire, mood changes. Apparently, the nanny is terrible. There's no blankets on the baby. And given all of her diseases, it's really important that this baby be properly taken care of. Shamea's husband's pissed, and he says they need to get rid of this lady, and that if the baby doesn't feel better by tomorrow, they're going to go to the doctor. Well, she gets off the phone, but she's visibly shaken, and she just loses it. She tells us during the confessionals that she's just always struggled so much with, the illnesses, that poor Shiloh doesn't get to have a regular life. Like, even for her first birthday, they weren't able to have a party because she was so afraid that she would catch something. And so she tells us that she feels like such a failure because she's not there with her daughter. All the girls console her. And then one of them calls the girls in the other van, and they basically cancel the rest of the evening, and they're going to head back to kind of support Shamea. So they're all sitting there, and Shamea's in her robe, and it's very quiet and sullen. And then Kelly calls for a prayer. Shamea just loses it. She's inconsolable. But Porsha's hugging her, and the tension finally gets broken when somebody points out that Porsha's titties are in Shamea's face. And Porsha says that, it was by design to comfort her, and everybody starts cracking up. And then Britt steps in, and she just goes the extra mile. I'm your friend, and I love you, and it doesn't matter. I'm always going to be there no matter what, and I love you like a sister. And it's a lot, you guys. I mean, I don't even think that they know each other for this level of drama, but whatever. If, that's what she wants to give us, that's what we're having. She's been pouring it on thick all season. And just to end things off, she says, "I love you like a sister, and I will take a motherfucking shot too of tequila." Good job, Britt, but too soon. Just too soon. So she does pour them all shots, and they toast to Shamea. And then again, for no particular reason, she heads in to make champagne, but instead whoops out her titties and pops them on the counter. Did you guys see how hard she landed on that counter? I would not be surprised if she busted them implants. Well, that's how that episode ends, and I'm assuming that we'll finish off with Grenada next week. I think that things could have gotten way worse and way out of hand. And as Atlanta goes, this was a very tame episode. And so we'll see what happens next week, and I'll be here to tell you about it. But, the takeaway is I learned how to make oil down. I'm not sure that I would ever make it, or, maybe that might be fun to do kind of in a food segment. Start to make some of these dishes that they experience when they're out on these cast trips and make it part of the food segment. I don't know, something to think about. Let's move on and talk about Love Hotel episode 7. This is the second to last episode of this season, and I'm quite certain it'll be renewed. We haven't heard anything yet, but it's a pretty big hit by Bravo standards, and everybody's talking about it. I don't know anybody that has watched it that says they hate it. So if you feel differently, well, maybe skip ahead. But this episode starts off with a bunch of rewinds, and in essence, what they're doing is kind of two things: telling us that there's very little time left, 68 hours, 53 hours, and also kind of showing us how things are going to be, and then they rewind to before that time, so that we could see how we got where we were going. So essentially, each of the girls is faced with a certain dilemma. For example, Ashley is torn between Wale and Ralph. But all of the girls congregate, and they show up at Shannon's room to find her in humongous rollers and crying. And then they rewind. We don't really get to see what the rewind is all about until later, but Shannon does tell us when they all congregate with Joel that she saw James coming out of Luanne's room this morning. And Luanne doesn't give a shit. She cares very little, but she just doesn't think that Shannon should be throwing her under the bus. Luanne, I have some things to say to you during this episode of the Living on the Verge podcast, because I heard from very reliable sources that you might be the Drew Nocchio of this show. And I'll tell you guys why shortly. We find ourselves with Joel in the group, and he announces that each girl can invite someone back for an overnight date before they make their final decisions, and that there will be no more eliminations until the final elimination. So then the producer asks, who is a better cuddler? Giselle says she doesn't like to cuddle. Do you like to cuddle? I think that we have in this world two sets of people, the cuddlers and the non-cuddlers. I hardly think that anybody falls in between. As for me, I used to be a cuddler, and then once I got to this stage in life where I'm constantly hot and cold, I'll let you add the implication, I stopped being a cuddler. I do not like to be touched when I am sleeping. I am one of those people who sleeps with one leg outside of the blanket. So cuddling would not work for me. But if I was a cuddler, I would want to be the big spoon so I could release whenever I wanted to. I don't know. Cuddling is just something some people like, and some people just like their personal space when they're resting. Mark is talking to Ashley, and he says he's interested in switching courses, and he would like to pursue Giselle. Ew, why is he talking about them like they're food courses? Ashley tells us that Mark doesn't have a chance in hell with Giselle. I agree. I don't think Mark is up to her standards, and ew, the way he talks about women. Very interesting. Phil is falling all over himself for Giselle, and yet she feels no sparks. But Theo, who is Mr. I'm taking it slow, she tells us she finds him super sexy. So she's one of those girls who likes the chase. She wants to be pursued, and then once she falls, then she kind of loses interest. That must be why she's never had like a true love and a long time relationship. I'd love to see that come to fruition on Potomac. We've never seen Giselle go through an entire season in a relationship. You know, she's gone in and out and broken up several times over the course of one season, but never has she had a man that we get to actually get to know. So that would be nice. Maybe it would be Phil. Well, I'm going to manifest that and put it out there into the ether so that maybe we get to see Phil with Giselle, and then we'll get to see his beautiful homes and his double R and all the other nice goodies, including his beautiful wardrobe, because the guy really knows how to dress, pretty dapper. So Wale tells us he cannot gauge who Ashley wants to be with. Don't worry, Wale, we can't gauge it either. I don't think Ashley can gauge who the hell she wants to be with. And I'm kind of sort of with Wale. He seems to be losing his patience, and I'm kind of starting to lose my patience with Ashley as well. I feel like if she's really there for love, then she needs to spend more quality time with each of them and stop trying to be diplomatic and spend equal times with them, because at this point, she should kind of know. It's been 3 weeks. Joel tells the group that he planned a painting party for everybody, and so they all head there, and the host at the painting party explains to us that they will be painting alebrijes, which are Mexican folk art sculptures of animals featuring bright, bold colors and patterns. Like in Coco, remember in Coco, the alebrijes that were flying all over the place? Well, apparently, whichever alebrije you pick is supposed to represent your soul and care for you. So the girls, each picked their own. There was a little fight over, I think, the dragons, but it all got settled without too much of an incident. And then they're all painting, and Giselle is talking to Mark about her daughters. And then she mentions that she just had to evacuate one of her daughters because of the impending hurricanes. So then she reaches over to Earl and she asks Earl if he's been watching out for them. And he says, yeah, I've been watching out all day because, oh, by the way, I have a house in Florida and in Georgia. And the hurricanes are kind of headed in that direction. And I love Shannon, but in the confessional, she explains to Giselle that Earl does have a house in St. Petersburg, but it's not on the water. And why does she have to go out of her way to say that? Shannon, you're well-groomed, you're trained in etiquette. It's not very polite for a girl like you, a young, proper woman, to be shaming someone based on the fact that they don't have waterfront property. And, you know, I get you come from a certain echelon, and I still love you, Shannon, but that comment was no bueno, no me gusta, no likey. Shannon, think before you speak. You sounded very entitled in that moment. Well, for some reason, Luanne chose to paint her face so she could look like an avatar, and that's what Ashley starts calling her. You guys, public safety announcement, it's not safe to paint your face with acrylic paint. You are subject to allergic reactions, chemical burns. Even if it's labeled as non-toxic, do not pull a Luanne. It was stupid. Don't do it. I can't imagine how long they're going to have that blue tint. It looked disgusting as the show went on. You could see it start to seep into their pores. It looked really gross. Just don't do it. Well, Luanne points out that one of her friends in Tulum started the biggest fetish festival in the world. First of all, that takes a certain kind of a person. But second of all, they start talking about fetishes. And we think Luanne's going to come out with something crazy, but she tells us that she has a fetish with hats. No shit, Sherlock. James says his fetish is dating a housewife. Cringe. And so does everybody else. That was just bleh. Ralph says his fetish is silence, and the whole group cracks up. And then Ashley, on the side, is urging Mitch to shoot his shot with Luanne. But Mitch starts complaining about James. You guys, I'm trying not to get hiccups, so that's what I'm trying to fight here. I guess I should have eaten before the podcast this morning, but I didn't. Mark pulls Giselle, and Giselle's not going for it. So she tells Mark she doesn't want to be anybody's second choice. You know what? Ashley was right. Mark, you're a day late and $1 short and just lacking in all things genuine and desirable. I agree with Giselle. You just want to be on TV. Giselle is not liking where this conversation is going, but thankfully for Giselle, Phil interrupts and asks to talk to Giselle. And Mark says, sure, come and join us. And then he makes sure that he says, no, alone. So Mark thankfully gets up to leave. And then they get to talking, and Phil tells Giselle that Cynthia and Mike had been at his house, but that he didn't mention it to Cynthia or to Giselle, mainly because he didn't think Cynthia recognized him and he had only met her that once. Do you believe this? Or do we call bullshit? You think there's a reason why Phil didn't mention it? I don't know, but it doesn't go any further than that. Who knows if it'll come up later, but that's where it ends. And we press on. Earl is talking to Shannon about his worries with the hurricanes, and Shannon is very sweet and reassuring this time. And he tells us that that's what he appreciates about Shannon, is that she's so thoughtful. Well, back in Giselle and Phil camp, Phil goes for broke, and he says he could see them being friends and lovers. Then Giselle says, Giselle's got to make some decisions. Do you ever find yourself speaking to yourself in the third person? I don't know why people do that. It's dumb. I do it too. I try not to because I'm aware of the fact that it sounds ridiculous. But nonetheless, I, from time to time, catch myself doing that. Wale tells Ashley that his mother really taught him how to be affirming and kind by constantly showering him with words of affirmation and bucking his ego up, and it made him a confident person, and therefore that is the way he wants to conduct himself, and that is the way he moves through life. I think that is such an important thing to instill in your children in this world of uncertainty and, all of the things that we're going through in society these days. I think it is one of the most important things a parent can do, and that is to affirm your child as they are growing up, because you're their safe space. And if you can fill them with affirmations and improve their self-esteem, those are things that they will take and carry with them throughout life. Conversely, if you do the opposite, they'll take and carry that too. So, well, look at me giving parenting advice today. With 56 hours until checkout, James, who lives in Maui, and Luanne, who lives in New York, are having a deep conversation about their future. And James seems convinced that things are going to get even better once they leave Love Hotel. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. You guys literally live on opposite sides of the globe. Well, not literally, but almost literally. They're not close. The flight from New York to Hawaii, not something you do really easily. And do we think that James was just joking when he said he did have a PP, a private plane? I think he was just bullshitting us. I didn't have time to look into it, so if anybody knows, please tell me. It wouldn't surprise me, though, because it would explain why Luanne is still hanging on to this guy. So let me tell you a little bit about the Countess. You may have remembered that I told you early on in an episode that I knew somebody who knows her and spent considerable amount of time with her. And this very reliable source spilled the tea. They told me that they knew Luanne had a party for a man who was courting her literally the weekend before she checked into the Love Hotel. So I'm going to leave it there, you guys, but it seems to me like the Countess was not single to begin with and showed up on Love Hotel for publicity or a paycheck or both. Either way, the way she's moving, if this is even barely true, ew. I'm telling you, it's a good source. I believe it. Luanne, go back to the cabaret and just leave us all alone. And oh, by the way, yeah, remember the picture that we just saw on social media last week? I think it was late last week, of Luanne on a bicycle somewhere in Sag Harbor with this humongous ring, and it was all over the place that the Countess was engaged. First of all, that was definitely planted. I can't imagine that picture was just some random photo op, because I happen to have it also on very good authority that the paparazzi does not hang around Sag Harbor waiting for people to pull up on bicycles on corners. So obviously this was a publicity stunt, and I think that we're very soon going to find out that the Countess, in fact, I think we may have already, that she is in a relationship with someone, and it is not anybody that she met on Love Hotel. So I would be curious to know if this is the same person that my source told me she had the party for the weekend before she left to the Love Hotel. So there you go. That's my tea on the Living on the Verge podcast about why I have a problem with the Countess. And I'd like you to just go back to the cabaret. Ashley and Ralph start to get into it. They talk about Ashley, and she tells Rob that she has had a female relationship within the last 2 years. Well, Ralph says that it would be something that they would have to discuss unless it was just a phase. But Ashley's quick to chime in and said it was not just a phase. First, I was worried about Ralph's reaction. It seemed a little homophobic, but they seem to have talked it through. I don't think we were privileged to all of the conversation that they discussed. And either he's saying what we want to hear or he's saying what she wants to hear. But either way, he says that he's been trying really hard not to completely fall in love with her. We're getting a lot of Maya on today's episode, so I don't know. I told you guys early on. Oh, speaking of, I'm going to digress here real quick. I took Maya to the vet yesterday because she needed her Bordadella. A lot of kennels are requiring it every 6 months now. So my boarding facility is one who does require it every 6 months. And so we went to go get a checkup and our shots. And guess what? Maya weighs 111 pounds. So the vet tells me she's doing great. Heart, lungs, hips, skin, coat, paws, teeth, eyes, ears, everything's great, except she's about 20 pounds overweight. I could not believe it. I had no idea, you guys. I didn't know that King Shepherds are only supposed to be about 95 pounds. So we need to get little Maya on a diet. And I had no idea that she was so overweight. So she's not very happy with me today, which could be why she's barking. We had to switch her off of like her rich diet that she was having. She's kind of a bougie dog. And the vet told me to substitute like green beans and carrots instead of wet food or turkey and brown rice. And she's not happy. Let's get back to Love Island. Mitch pulls Luanne and he starts to tell her what kind of man she needs. And he tells her that he doesn't think that James treats her respectfully. Well, Luanne's super disrespectful to Mitch. She doesn't like his approach. And basically, she blows him off, stands up, and walks away. You see what I mean? They all congregate with Joel, and James tries to get away with being shirtless. What in the hell is with these guys? Okay, here's another public service announcement to men over 50. Keep your damn shirts on. There is no woman your age or younger that is impressed with you ripping your shirt off, whether you're well built or not. When you're at a certain age, nobody wants to see you with your shirt off unless you're actually like in a swimming pool. And even then, if you're of a certain body type, maybe wear a rash guard. Not that I'm body shaming anybody, but it's more attractive to see a man who knows where he's at in life than someone who's trying to hold on to their youth. And Earl and James walking around shirtless, ugh, not feeling it. Okay, let's move on. Shannon invites Earl to spend the night, and Shannon thinks her daughters really don't see them together, but she wants to try. So everybody has an opinion about Shannon's relationship, and most of them think it's a terrible idea. I know that this is not going to work out, but I really, really wish that Shannon and Earl would work out because I think they're a super cute couple. And I think that Earl can teach Shannon a lot about the world outside of Orange County and the class status level that she's been at. And I think Shannon could teach Earl a little bit about waterfront living and fine dining. I thought they'd be a cute couple. Sometimes you don't have to be in the same, like at the same level in order to make one another better people. And isn't that what a relationship is supposed to be? I'm confused, but I don't think this is going to last anyway, so maybe I've already spent too much time on it. Joel tells everybody that there's going to be a spa group date, and the itinerary consists of hot tub, cold plunge, massage pools, and floating dessert. Okay, first of all, I think it's hilarious how all of the activities are centered around the resort, and basically they just went into the spa. I go to a spa in Loreto that is set up like this, only it's much more extravagant. It has many more options, and they have the cold plunge, and they have the rain shower and the Swiss shower, and then 3 different jacuzzis. I mean, it's just a dream date. But I just heard this morning, as a matter of fact, that cold plunges are no longer going to be the thing. because recently studies are finding that excessive use of cold plunges actually shrinks muscles. Thank God, because I was never looking forward to this and I was never going to do it. So hopefully the phase will end soon and we can all move on. But they go in the cold plunge, at least a few of them, but not before James blurts out that nobody should touch Luanne because that's his girl. Well, both Mark and Mitch get pissed off and they pop off. And then Mitch in particular says he would punch him if Leanne was his friend. But Luanne says, he makes me feel like a princess. And Mitch has the audacity to even verbalize it. Damn. Based on what I know, you guys, I feel like Luanne is on Love Hotel mainly to get it in a few times before she goes back home to her boyfriend. And I'm not judging if her boyfriend's cool with that. I mean, at least she gave him a party before she left. All this tea, of course, is alleged, but I'm pretty sure I have it from a very good source. Well, when James is asked, he doubles down again on his love for Luanne. And apparently, Luanne likes being love bombed because she is just loving it. So they're all changed into their spa robes and they head out to the spa date. And we have Shannon, Phil, Mitch, Earl, and almost Giselle until she put her toe in and realized how freezing it was. They all head to the cold plunge. And Shannon lasts just a few seconds. And everybody is concerned and shocked and surprised by how long Phil is staying in. Meanwhile, James has Luanne pinned in the corner. And she's giggling and throwing her legs up. I hate to say it. No, I don't hate to say it. Luanne, you're an attention whore. And honestly, I would apologize for saying that, but it makes me a little bit sad for her because it seems to me that she craves it so much that that's how she places her value. She talks a good talk. She acts like she has really, really high self-esteem. But at the end of the day, she's really depending on everybody else's treatment of her to validate herself as a human being. And honestly, I find that kind of sad. Well, I guess that's somebody else we could cross off of ever coming on the Living on the Verge podcast. I think I need to be more careful. But I told you guys I would be honest, so that's what you're getting. Wale cannot believe he is in a battle for Ashley with a 61-year-old European man. And he's well aware of the fact that he is very likely being judged by many because he's judging himself in this moment. Having said that, he does not say how high. When Ashley finally does tell him to jump, she walks over there and asks to speak with him for a moment while he's hot tubbing. And he tells her no. And she walks away a little taken aback. He tells us he's just tired of her being on the fence. So Giselle says, well, you need to go tell her that. So then he confronts her and about the decision. And he says, I'm losing respect for myself by standing by for all the back and forth. And he thinks that she has enough data to make a decision. That's what I thought. I said that earlier. Well, I thought he was leaving because basically she says, well, it seems like you're making the decision for me. And it ends a little bit chilly and they both go their own way. But we see on next week's preview that he's still there and she's kissing him again. So I don't know what the hell's going on. But Earl does move in with Shannon. We see him rolling down the hall with his little suitcase. And no sooner are they settled that Shannon leaves to have dinner with the girls. What the fuck? I find this a terrible move. Unless this was a required dinner, Shannon, that was a bad, bad decision. Regardless of hurricane, regardless of anything, you just asked this guy to move in with you. He just got settled. Doesn't it stand to reason that you guys would spend the first evening together? You told us that the reason you asked him to move in is because that's how you really get to know somebody. And then you take off to a dinner with the girls where you're dancing on the bar and he's, according to you, waiting back at the room for you to show up? So we're back at the beginning of the show where they talk about Hurricane Helene, which, by the way, made landfall in Florida on September 26, 2024, and also in Georgia. which is where Earl's primary home is. So we see Earl being interviewed, and his perspective is that Shannon should have chosen to stay with him just because he was worried. I agree. Shannon thought that when she asked him how things were going and he said it had changed directions, that everything was okay. I still think that that was not a license to go to the dinner because, like I just said, she should have stayed with him regardless. For one moment, they're having a conversation and Shannon becomes old Shannon. She starts shouting in that annoying old Shannon voice. It was so reminiscent of her fights with David. And she says, "You told me it wasn't going to make landfall." Then she seems to catch herself. And she resets and she states and clarifies what he said the day before. And then she apologizes. Earl says, "That's not good enough." I think Earl's feelings are just super hurt. And he really needed her to have his back in this moment. And I think that that told him a lot about the type of person that Shannon is. Shannon says it's all about communication, but Earl's pretty worked up. So he thinks Shannon should have understood his worry and been there for him. And he thinks that she didn't take enough of an interest. Shannon's beside herself. She's telling the girls about this, but the girls are convinced that these are huge red flags. Are you with Giselle? Is Earl just doing the most? Should he be more understanding? I'm not. I'm Team Earl. I do see some red flags with regards to how this relationship between Earl and Shannon would shake out at the end of the day. And I feel like if Shannon could be triggered into her David Bador voice with Earl while still on the show, then it doesn't fare well for them having a blissful relationship off camera. But nonetheless, I still feel that Shannon should have had Earl's back in that moment. If you're trying to forge a relationship with someone, then you should be trying to read them. And if you can't read them, you should just plain and simple ask, if you care enough to ask. Maybe you care more about dancing on a table or a bar. So it's time for everybody to congregate again, and Joel shows up. Well, immediately, the girls want to hear Earl's side of the story. He starts explaining, and Shannon starts to get visibly upset. She whispers to, I think, Giselle, who's sitting next to her, or Luanne, I can't remember who, that she really wants to walk out right now. She says in quite the agitated voice, "How dare you?" And we get a big "to be continued." Well, that's it, you guys. We have one more episode, and the previews look very steamy. Nothing in particular that gives away how any of this is going to end, but we do have a little spoiler tidbit. Did you see that? Phil gets a kiss. Giselle finally kisses Phil. So we'll see where that ends. But listen, I thought it was a really good episode again. It was a little bit darker than the ones we had seen previously, but I think this show holds up. I really do. And I like that they're keeping it short to 8 episodes. It makes it approachable. It makes it something to look forward to. I like it. Well, I told you guys that I might be diverting and pivoting over to TLC. It's still reality TV, but there's so many good shows on TLC. I've always watched the 90 Day franchise, and a lot of you have as well. And then you've either, gotten bored with it or lost interest or have not liked certain seasons. But for some reason, between the 90 days before the 90 days and the other way and the happily ever after and all of the different iterations of this franchise, you've watched something. So we have a new one. It's called 90 Day Fiancé Hunt for Love. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but I'm really liking this show, so I'm just going to give you the basics. It kind of gives like old-time Bachelor vibes, like when The Bachelor was good, and Bachelor in Paradise. So basically, it's all the cast-offs that have been on any other 90-day show, and they all show up to Mexico so that they can hunt for love. We have Tiffany, Usman, Courtney, Rob, Tim, Chantel, Jennifer, and Colty. If you've watched any of the franchises, these names will ring a bell. I am loving the casting. These 90-day people are joined together with other people that we don't know. They're just average, everyday folk. And the idea is that they're going to try to find matches with one another. Now, I don't know how the show progresses because it's only been a couple of episodes, but in episode 2, they did speed dating. And my God, Chantel, no wonder you're there. You really need some help with dating. You are awkward as fuck. But you do tell us that you're a little preoccupied because right before you came on the show, you know, Ashley, she's the one who was married to Manuel. She kissed Chantel, and Chantel liked it. So now she's conflicted and she's wondering if she's a lesbian. Is that how it works? They get teamed up for the exercise on flirting, and Mr. Soulja Boy, Usman, turns on the heat. He is going to sing his way to love with the same 3 bars that he's been singing every song since we've seen him on the 90-day franchise. You guys, I love Tiffany. When she told us that Usman's song is a banger, I cracked up. Obviously, she was just being facetious. I've been watching Tiffany since she went to South Africa to meet her guy, and that didn't work out. And I've always loved her tattoos. So Tiffany, if you're listening, can you please link your tattoo artist on my Instagram or send me a DM? Ever since I've been watching, the vibrancy of the colors on your artwork has never faded. It's always been very pretty. I don't know if you're getting it touched up or not, but I'm loving the work. Okay, just an observation. Did anybody else notice the pterodactyl-sized seagulls that they have at this resort? Honestly, I rewound it like 3 times because it looked like a fucking pterodactyl. Those things are huge. Those are the things that you have to think about when you're traveling to places you've never been. You know, in Grenada, you have the rhesus monkeys, and apparently in Tulum, you have the pterodactyl-sized seagulls. So it might behoove you to look ahead to see where you're going, to just mentally prepare for what type of wildlife you might need to, get ready for. I might want to take my own advice when it comes to Europe. I digress. Tim and Jennifer can't make it 2 minutes in the hot tub together. Now, who thought that this was going to be a good idea, putting Tim in a hot tub with Jennifer? I mean, I'm surprised that the water didn't bubble over and both of them didn't melt in the hot lava. And did anybody else notice that Elise is the only non-90-day person that's getting any screen time at this point? Well, they did. There has been a lot of buzz online about how pissed off the non-90-day cast members of The Hunt for Love have been. They say they are feeling bamboozled, allegedly, because they were led to believe they were going to one show and instead they are ending up on another show where basically they're just there to fill the screen. So this show looks like it's really cute. I think that there is a lot that could happen. You know what? Cute's a bad choice of words. I don't know why I said cute, but I think that this show could get juicy because we have Jennifer, who is kind of torn between Rob and a non-90-day guy whose name is Cole. And then we have Rob, who is really, really already smitten with Jennifer, but he's already made out with Elise. So Elise is kind of holding his feet to the fire. We'll see how this thing turns out. I will decide if I want to cover it or just give you a quick synopsis. Let me know your thoughts, you guys. If you want to hear more about the 90-day franchise, in particular at this point, Hunt for Love, then shoot me a DM and let me know. I'm going to move on to part 2 of our finance class. If you listened to last Tuesday's podcast, you got steps 1, 2, and 3 of the 7-day the 7-step plan for getting on budget. So today we're covering steps 4 through 7, and I'm going to very quickly just recap that. Step 3 was to track your spending, and you're supposed to save all your documents either from last month's bills or from this month's bills to come up with where you're spending every dollar. And you can do that with highlighters or on a computer spreadsheet. I am linking in today's episode show notes the super budget worksheet that is provided by this company that is not sponsoring me. I just found it online and I thought it was a really good one. It has a few tabs so that you can track things in different ways. But step 4 is to compare your guesses to reality. The results will probably be eye-opening. You're going to get good inspiration for how to adjust your budget. Maybe you spent way more than you thought on groceries or way less than you guessed. So this is the first step, and it's the important step because all the stuff that follows is where things really start to get good. You start to build your budget, and that's step 5. That big colorful sheet or the spreadsheet in front of you, it'll start to give you the clarity on what you're actually spending each month. So you can shape this into a realistic budget with fixed and variable expenses. So fixed expenses are things you cannot change, like your rent, your car payment, loans. But variable expenses are those that vary from month to month. And those are things that need to be averaged out based on maybe 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And you can just average it. We're talking about things like groceries, dining out, beauty services, clothing, entertainment. This is the area where you have a lot of control and you can make adjustments and optimize your budget. So step 6 is exactly that: refine or make adjustments. So you compare and adjust your budget from your estimated to your actual, and you want to adjust your spending kind of sort of in this method if you can. We want to try to use the 50-30-20 rule. So this rule states that 50% of your income is spent on needs, while 30 is spent on wants, and 20 is put into savings. You guys, don't forget to add savings. Always pay yourself first, even if it's just a little bit. I promise you're not going to miss the $10 or $20 that you put into your savings account that you would have used on a Starbucks or, on a nasty burrito from some food truck. Pay yourself first. That money adds up. Then step 7, keep your budget going. Stay on budget. Once you've done the hard work of figuring out what you want your budget to be, now it's a matter of sticking to what you started. So you're going to know where your money is going each month, and you're going to know where you want your money to go each month. The most important part of step 7 is checking in with yourself and your budget. In the beginning, check in once a week. I know it sounds laborious, but I promise weeks go by really quickly these days. And if you're old enough to do a budget, then you're old enough to recognize that time's a flying. So check each week. You don't have to put a bunch of time in it. Just see if you're on budget or not. As you get better at this, you can start to check once a month to see how you're doing, and then once every other month, and so on and so forth, until before you know it, you're going to have a regular budget and you'll be confident. You'll know how much money you have, how much money you don't have, how much money you're saving, and where you want your goals to go. Check back and reorganize it every now and then, and you'd be surprised how just knowing where your money is going will empower you to be in control and in charge of your budget instead of the other way around. So this wraps up our 7 steps to creating your budget. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd like to hear your feedback. Check in with me if you have any questions. Don't forget to download the spreadsheet and check that out. It's a good tool to use. So if you were having trouble with budgeting, I hope this has helped you a little bit, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Living on the Verge podcast. We'll be back on Friday. Have a good week. Bye.